Monday night?
Yeah.
Welcome on behalf of NAMI Appalachian South. I'm Ann Nandria. I think I have a big voice tonight. That's good. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
It's been shown many times and places that a community united in a common cause is one of the most effective means, and that's whether you are called a community, or as we are sometimes referred to now, as a tribe, and whether you are battling a saber-toothed tiger or you're battling a substance use epidemic, it works. We all are affected by it, and we all have a part in solving the problem. We're glad you're all here tonight. Thank you very much for coming. We're looking forward to Mr. McDonald's presentation and helping us learn how to establish a recovery community here in our area. I found my notes. There's always hope. First word from our sponsor, NAMI Appalachian South. NAMI Appalachian South is one of a local affiliate of NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. There are about 30 affiliates in North Carolina. We're the most western one, and there are some clear to the coast. It is now an international organization. We call it a grassroots organization. We're not professionals. We are peers. We are people who have experience with mental illness, either as a family member, caregiver, or as a person who is challenged with the illness. There are many, many members all over the world. We are dedicated to improving the lives of people who are affected by mental illness. And we do that in 3 ways: through education, through advocacy, and through peer support. We feel our goal is to be a voice to those who might otherwise be silent. In the area of education, we offer a family-to-family class, which is just outstanding. It is designed for people who are caring for a family member, and it is a 12-week, once-a-week class. If you are interested in that, there's a sign-up sheet at the information table in the lobby. Leave us your name and your contact number. It does not obligate you to anything. It obligates us to let you know when we're scheduling that, and we hope to do that this fall after school starts. We also offer a peer-to-peer class, which is more designed for people who are challenged with a mental illness. It's a 10-week class, somewhat on the same line. You learn coping skills, you learn about mental illness, you learn something about how the brain works, you learn communication skills, you learn to understand the illness and hopefully recovery and how to prevent relapses. Recommend both of those. And in the area of peer support, we have, by the way, brochures on family-to-family and peer-to-peer at the table where you sign up if you would like more detailed information. We offer a peer support group every week here in Franklin. There's, with more detailed information, this is a combination group. Pick up this information. There's contact information there if you would like more information on that. Also, in the area of peer support, we are now in our 3rd year of a peer support group in the Macon County Detention Center in the female section. We started this as a pilot program and is the only one in North Carolina. We started it right here. in cooperation with law enforcement. As far as we know, it's the only one in the nation of its kind. It's generated a lot of interest, and we hope that more people will maybe follow this model. Our outcomes have been very challenging to measure. We've tried several methods, and the only thing we can say is we have had several known success stories. We also see some people, again, we keep up our thoughts that everyone counts and each one counts. And it takes time for the seeds to grow. So our facilitators are still enthusiastic about it. The law enforcement officers are very supportive. We also are currently in a membership drive. There are some membership forms, again, at the sign-up table, and our membership chair will be standing by to explain the options you have to join, if you would like to join us in any sort of role. Also, if you order from Amazon, if you would put us on your SMILE account, NAMI Appalachian South, we get some funds from that. In addition to that, my husband always says, find out where the money comes from. That's the name of the organization. And as far as I know, we're not getting any from Russia, if that's any assurance to you. We have been supported by the North Carolina Community Fund, by the Macon County Community Fund, and by the Evergreen Foundation, and our membership dues, which I mentioned, and also by our membership, also by gifts. We've had generous gifts from the Neidig Family Foundation that have been very helpful, and others that make us gifts. Now, I would like to introduce, I've worked really hard on this, Mr. Donald McDonald. Okay? I thought it might be a lot like looking at a tree when you're downhill skiing, and the more you look at it, the more likely you are to hit it. We are very pleased and grateful to have Mr. McDonald come. He comes at his own expense. We appreciate that kind of dedication. He has a master's degree in social work from the University of North Carolina. He is a addiction recovery specialist. Okay, is that close enough?
That sounds better.
That sounds better. Ask for a raise. Okay. He has worked in long-term recovery for a long time and is involved in the organization that he will talk about. His interests have been in recovering advocacy, in decreasing stigma about recovery, and in promoting recovery capital and building recovery capital in communities. So, welcome, Donald.
So, what we were trying to avoid was Ronald McDonald. Right? My mic's hot. Let me put it down a little bit. There we go. I got a really prestigious award in the Navy once. It was very exciting. I was in the Navy back during the Cold War. And I was very excited about it. And they handed it to me, and it said Ronald McDonald on it. And I still have that, and I don't mind. I don't mind. Yeah, there we go. I'm in front of you. That's where it's the power.
Sorry.
We're
A little power
more struggle there.
Dan wins.
Yeah, right? Okay. I'm Donald McDonald. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Education with Recovery Communities in North Carolina. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to promote addiction recovery, wellness, and citizenship through advocacy, education, and support, just like NAMI. We're chiefly funded through block grant funding with the amazing cooperation and regular support of the Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services. We're very grateful for their support. So, why am I here today? Harry came to the North Carolina CIT conference, and the presentation that I gave to law enforcement and EMS and teachers and other administrators resonated with him. I know that my discovery of this content was, it was an awakening for me as well. It was empowering, and the more I share it, the more it empowers communities and families and people in recovery and people seeking recovery. It's a bit of an untold story, and this is where we need to start as we're organizing a community of recovery here in Franklin. This was a trajectory-changing moment in the Clan McDonald. This was the summer of 1974, when we moved from out west to North Carolina. I'm the little tow-haired dude right there. My sister Michelle, my sister Valerie, my mom, my rascal brother Bradley, my oldest brother Ricky, and my rebel without applause, Michael. There, that's my family. We were in a household that was terrifying, with a lot of trauma, mental illness, and substance use disorder, and instability. It was absolutely horrifying. That's what this little dude was raised in. Fortunately, we moved into a duplex, and on the other side was a bunch of college guys who I thought were like, holy crap, this is a different species of individual who actually go to college. Well, fortunately, one of them fell in love with my mom. And then we escaped to North Carolina. Awesome. Got a dude who's pretty stable, college kid, raised in a pretty healthy family in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I got a real fair shake at life here, you think. But there's 6 of us. This is 6 kids with a genetic predisposition for mental illness and substance use disorder, very low recovery capital, raised in hostile environment, introduced to early childhood trauma. It doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. One of us doesn't make it out alive. So, that's my sister Valerie. She was the smartest among us, and the most creative, and the most special, but perhaps the most damaged. Serious substance use disorder, serious mental illness, homelessness, and not a recovery supportive environment, even though we seemingly had stabilized, because back then we still thought addiction and mental illness was a self-inflicted thing. Just straighten up and fly right. We kicked her out of the house. And then when I got older, she sought refuge with me. But I was trying to get sober at the time, so I didn't want to let her move in with me either. So she died homeless and alone. But as a child, when I was growing up, I said, I am not going to be like her. I am not going to be like Valerie. I'm not going to be like Valerie. Promised my mom. She said, Donald, don't grow up to be like Valerie. I said, I won't do that to you. That was the plan. That was the plan. But had early exposure to alcohol and drugs. And I succumbed to severe substance use disorder. Mental illness manifested later in life with recalcitrant mood disorder, with psychotic features. And eventually I had to go to a mental hospital, and then I had to seek treatment for substance use disorder. And it really worked out well for me. It really worked out well for me through just a perfect storm of dumb luck, privilege, access, supportive family, urban community with lots of mutual aid programs. I was under the care of a psychiatrist who managed my meds. And when I went to him and said, "Hey man, I think I've got ADHD, what do you think?" He said, "No, Donald, you don't." "Hey man, I think I've got this anxiety thing, this GAD thing." He's like, "No, Donald, you don't." It's like, just, he was a smart dude and knew what I was looking for. And when I wanted to go to treatment, the bed was available that day. He made a phone call. I had insurance and got to go to a pretty decent place. And when my insurance ran out after 3 weeks, which was really strange, this treatment center in Greensboro said, we'll keep you for another week. We'll charge you whatever you can pay, a little bit here and there when you get out. I'm like, what is this about? But that was pretty cool. That was a fair shake. That was very lucky of me to get that. Not everybody gets that. So as a result of access, dumb luck, privilege, support, timing, recovery capital at home with a supportive and loving family, an employer that gave me the time off, and then took me back into work and said, "How's it going for you, Donald? You doing all right?" Moving to an urban area where there was a multitude of peer recovery mutual aid programs to pick from until I found my tribe. I did really well. That's Donald McDonald. In May 2016, when I graduated from the 5th ranked social work school in the nation, with my wife and my 4 kids and my grandson, Milo. My wife can trust me today. My children are proud of me. I have been able to find a very awesome career that gives me purpose. And I have actualized in recovery. I have become a full human being. I am a citizen. I have a tribe. I'm suddenly no longer selfish, and I'm trying to say, everybody else, come get you some of what I got. But they're facing things like maybe not having access to treatment on demand, maybe not having their diagnosis be appropriate, and finding the meds and getting family support and all the stuff that I got. I just want to say this and just get it out of the way. We must be deliberate about the treatment and the recovery support for substance use disorder and mental health. We must be deliberate about it. It cannot be left to luck. It cannot be left to faith. It cannot be left to chance. It is not a matter of who wants it more. It is a matter of who gets things lined up just right. And I was lucky that that happened, and you see the outcome. My family has benefited. My employer has benefited. My community has benefited. My entire state is benefiting from my recovery right now. If you knew what they paid me. That was a joke. Dude, that's the laugh track. Galen will put it in for us. A little laughter there, just some chuckles. Uncomfortable chuckles. Okay. All right. So this is serious business. We created this social math graphic. I learned that in social work school. Folks understand statistics better when they can generate an image that's meaningful to them. So I got the numbers from the Division of Public Health's Injury and Violence Prevention Branch. All these numbers are readily available to you as well. all the deaths from poisonings. That's what they call overdoses. They call them poisonings. That's okay. This is just from prescription opioid overdose, just. And this is a school bus, and I packed it beyond capacity. I've broken regulations with how many bodies I put in it monthly. This is the opioid epidemic in North Carolina. A school bus full of North Carolinians every month bursting into flames. That's a problem. That's a problem. And they don't necessarily deserve it, because 1 in 7 of us are born this way. 1 in 7 of us are born this way. There is no definitive profile for the individual that is going to be anchored down by substance use disorder. It happens to 1 in 7 of us. This is from the Surgeon General's report. And that's okay. Let's say we seek treatment, we want treatment. We need specialized treatment. Specialized treatment, only 1 in 10 of us receive specialized treatment for substance use disorder when we need it. This is a problem. This is a problem. We know a lot about substance use disorder. The really great news is that 23 million of us are thriving in recovery in the United States. We can recover with severe substance use disorder complicated by mental illness. We still can recover, and we can get well. And if given the proper recovery support services for an appropriate amount of time, we get better than well. And then we circle back around and we want to bring other people along. This thing will work. This thing will work, and we're going to create a culture of recovery in America that's going to be the envy of the entire world. We can, and we can do it now. I reached out to my friend. We had a co-occurring disorders training at RCNC recently, and I said, hey, send me that slide about prevalence. Substance use disorder and mental illness do not live in silos from one another. 50 to 75% of substance use disorder clients, patients, participants, consumers also have co-occurring mental health problems. Women at a higher rate. Mental health programs report 20 to 50% co-occurrence of substance use disorder issues. So, one thing to start treating the soil in your community to build a strong recovery community is to end the debate about whether or not substance use disorder is a brain disorder and not a moral, self-inflicted issue, an issue of will. 1939, when the big book Alcoholics Anonymous was written, we had a group of people about 4 years old that had found a tremendous solution of one peer helping another. They had landed onto something that had baffled people for thousands of years, but they wanted to get a little support from the professional community. So they got Dr. Silkworth to write the doctor's opinion, because at that time it was an opinion. He said, it's a curious thing. These seem to be real nice fellows, normally. Introduce alcohol, and there seems to be some kind of allergic reaction. It looks like an allergic reaction. Isn't this strange? Some kind of allergy. If we could just keep them away from alcohol, and these people have seemed to have found that, and in fact, they actually get better than well and start wanting to help each other. This is a really neat thing going on. That's the doctor. 1956, the American Medical Association came out and said, alcoholism is an illness by definition. 1967 to 2008, I studied this in social work school. The 10 studies that shook the addiction world. We've got smoking guns, brain slides and studies, continuing to try and study the pathology of addiction to prove it's one thing or another. An orgy of evidence. 2011, the American Society for Addiction Medicine. 4-year comprehensive literature study, 80 experts, top in their field, 4 years. Addiction seems to be a brain disorder. Thank you. Facebook status update, hashtag thank you, ironically. 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders starts talking about it as substance use disorder. They abandoned substance abuse as a word, began speaking about it as a spectrum disorder, mild, moderate, and severe. A nice clinical expression for what we've known for 50 years. The Surgeon General's report, this was a really big deal. This was a really big deal when Admiral Vivek Murthy came out with the Surgeon General's report on alcohol, drugs, and health. That basically over and over and over again reiterated, addiction is not a moral issue. Addiction is a treatable brain disorder, not self-inflicted, not a moral issue. That got us into this problem. The body count's too high to keep thinking that way. 2017, generally speaking, the acute care model of addiction treatment is still treating substance use disorder like it's a self-inflicted broken bone. The more we learn about addiction, the more we learn about substance use disorder, the pathology, the etiology, the evidence-based treatments of it, the less we're giving people. The less we're giving people. How does that make sense? The more we know, the more studies indicate the longer treatment, the better. The longer treatment, the better. The shorter treatment gets, if you get treatment. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, right? So it's not logical. It's unreasonable. So if our thinking isn't rooted in logic, it's emotion. One of these 10 studies that shook the addiction world compared substance use disorder to other chronic illnesses like asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. Because we've been giving lip service to substance use disorder for years. Oh, it's a chronic illness. Well, measure that. So they found a way to measure it based upon certain measurable markers that exist among asthma, hypertension, diabetes, and substance use disorder. Let's measure this objectively. First, they took a look at the causes. Controllable risk factors, uncontrollable risk factors, estimated genetic influence. It quacks like a duck. It might be a duck. Took a look at treatment outcomes, and treatment compliance. Let's measure all these things. Is there a cure? Is there a diagnostic criteria? Are there evidence-based protocols? Do family psychoed help? It walks like a duck. It's a chronic illness. Yes, but these frustrating folks with substance use disorder, they just don't do what they're supposed to do. If I found out I had diabetes that was going to kill me, I would take my diabetes medicine. Actually, this mind-blowing study showed that folks with substance use disorder are actually more compliant than folks with asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. That argument's blown out of the water. But I will affirm with you, when folks don't follow treatment protocol and continuing support, it hurts us. It hurts family. It hurts the community. I get that. I'm not making light of that. But just as researchers, as objective human beings, we're looking at this, we can say, this looks like a chronic illness. Perhaps we should treat it like one. We haven't been. We treat other chronic illnesses in a recovery management style. We've been treating addiction in an acute care style. give you a little brief stint of an intervention, send you on your way, and say, keep your nose clean. For persons with other chronic illnesses, when they cease treatment and then they become sick again, that shows that the treatment is working. And that's justification for more resources, more treatment. When persons with substance use disorder cease their treatment, it shows as a treatment failure, and it becomes justification to take away resources. It doesn't make sense.
Because what I want to tell you as a historian of this field is the acute care model of addiction treatment in the United States, as we have evolved it over 40 years, is politically and scientifically not sustainable. Did everybody hear me? As a cultural institution, addiction treatment is on probation. We simply became an alternative to the revolving doors of jails and drunk tanks and emergency rooms of general hospitals. And we promised them we would end that revolving door. And we had great promises of what we would do by way of recovery. And we have done some amazing things, agreed? We have people whose lives have been absolutely transformed through this thing we call addiction treatment. We have people who don't have enough words in their language to express the gratitude of what addiction treatment has meant for them and their families. But we are going to do, particularly early this afternoon, a fearless and searching moral inventory of addiction treatment as a system of care, looking at performance data. And what I'm going to tell you is with that performance data, compared to what we promised the community in this country we can do with addiction treatment, the gap is so great, it is unsustainable. How long do you think it will be, or are we already at a point where almost everyone in this country knows someone for whom addiction treatment did not work? What do you think a family who's about to readmit their addicted family member for the 5th time feels when they hear the slogan, treatment works? What do you think a family hears when they hear the slogan, treatment works, who buried their child from an overdose after 4 very expensive episodes of what they were told was the best addiction treatment in the country? We're going to talk about addiction treatment works. It has effects. But what we're going to talk about is this simple point. We are putting people in interventions in the United States whose problem severity and complexity is so great, whose recovery capital is so low, we're putting them in interventions so brief, so weak, it has little probability of success. And when they fail, what do we do with them? We punish them because we say he or she had their chance. As family members, we divorce them. We extrude them from our households. We send them to prison. We fire them from our places of employment. We take their babies from them because they had their chance. And what I'm going to argue with you throughout the day is that was not a chance. That was a setup. That was not a personal failure. That was a systems failure. Are you with me?
Okay. So there's an affirmation in there that some treatment is really awesome, and some people are really happy with the treatment they got. My last treatment center, it was my 5th, but my last treatment center, I almost held in holy awe what they did for me. You know, so when people would speak poorly of them, I would take that personally. So there's an affirmation. Treatment works. It has effect. There's an additional affirmation that needs to be made, though. My board chair, Chris Budnick, came out recently with a public amends, and it's on our website, rcnc.org. Public amends to people with substance use disorder, their families, and their communities. And it's where he, is a veteran clinician, a treatment provider in the community, acknowledged, I have not been giving you adequate treatment. Knowing what we know about substance use disorder and its chronic nature and the need for multiple treatment events and the need for long-term continuing care, I have not given you that. And when you fail, I blame you. And when you leave my treatment center and try some other pathway of recovery and you succeed, I secretly resent you for being successful. Or if you fail, I say, I told you so. Acknowledge our part in that. And Bill White, he's a recovery researcher. He was a researcher of the pathology of addiction for years, but then said, why don't we start studying recovery? And he became probably the leader of the national recovery movement. The guy's a rock star. He really is. He published a blog called A Call for Humility, a call for clinical humility, a call for clinical humility. Let's acknowledge our part in this, clinicians. Let's acknowledge our part in this. Knowing what we know, have we stepped up and given appropriate and adequate treatment and recovery support services? And the answer, generally speaking, would be no. So there's a need for a little levity in this, right? So I got to go visit Bill White down in Florida, and I got to have pie with him. And that's me trying to hold back a really one of those ugly smiles. You know? I was really, really happy that day. One of the best weekends of my life. So let's catch up. Let's summarize. Are we on the same page as a community? Substance use disorder is a treatable brain disorder. Not weak will, not a moral failing. This is no longer up for debate. This is no longer up for debate. The earth is round. You got this weird sense that it's flat. That's cool, man. Process that. Process that with your therapist. Pray on it. Do what you got to do. The earth is round. It's proven. Substance use disorder is a treatable chronic brain disorder. It don't have nothing to do with how smart you are, how moral you are, how strong you are, or how ready or how willing you are. It just doesn't. I know that's a pretty big statement. We can say that it is a chronic disorder strikingly similar to other chronic disorders because we measured it objectively like researchers do. It wasn't an emotional statement, it was a scientific statement. This seems to be a chronic disorder. For decades, we have not been treating it as a chronic disorder. We've been treating it like it is an issue of weakness, an issue of bad morality. And I got to have pie with him. Are we on the same page? All right. You may ask yourself, how did this happen? How did this happen? We got smart doctors and smart clinicians, and we got legislators that represent their constituents. Honestly, we've got bureaucrats committed to healing their communities. How did this happen? How did this happen? I like this dude. He's on these alien shows. He says, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it is aliens. It's discrimination. We are at the point in the national recovery movement, we are at the point in the North Carolina recovery movement where we can probably stop saying the word stigma. When you discover that your child has a substance use disorder and you reach out for help and there is no help there for you, that's not stigma. That's discrimination. When a young man comes to my office and he's seeking help and we call the phone number on the back of his card and the person on the other end says you've only got 2 treatment options in the entire state and there's a 1-month waiting list for each, that's not stigma. That's discrimination. We are dealing with a civil rights issue right now. This is a social justice movement. It is gaining a lot of momentum now. The body count is getting higher. It's impacting all people in America. It has been impacting many of us for a long time. You feel me? So we can advocate. The more we learn about this, the more we look at it with an honest lens. There seems to be discriminatory practices involved with substance use disorder and mental health in America. We are not receiving adequate treatment. We are not getting appropriate recovery supports. Some of this has to do with language. Language is the root of stigma. And one thing that our CNC can do, and we have partners throughout the state who are trained up in this, it's called Recovery Community Messaging Training. Recovery Community Messaging Training, it serves a couple purposes that I'll get into later. We throw around the word stigma a lot, but what exactly is stigma? This is a conference on stigma. It must be a pretty big thing to have an actual world conference on it. But in this definition of stigma, is a degrading and debasing attitude of the society that discredits a person or a group because of an attribute. Stigma destroys a person's dignity, marginalizes affected individuals, violates basic human rights, markedly diminishes the chances of a stigmatized person of achieving their full potential, and seriously hampers the pursuit of happiness and contentment. Wowzers. Stigma is a bad thing. Stigma is a bad thing. Stigma is a mark. So, an attribute, whether it be the color of one's skin, whether it be the size of their wallet, whether it be their diagnosis, because of that singular attribute, it discredits the entire remaining content of their character, of their being. They are a non-entity because of this one attribute that we have decided discredits them. This is not new. This is not exclusive to substance use disorder and mental health. So, public perception of addiction and mental illness is based upon what we see in the media. We know that. We are portrayed as junkies, lushes, and crackheads. Mental illness are generally portrayed as violent. When we see people getting into trouble, famous people, politicians, get caught with their cookie in the hand jar. Cookie in the hand jar. Can you edit that? Right. Ronald McDonald? Cookies. They go off to rehab. We call it rehab. They get out and they act like they're all better, and then they inevitably sometimes relapse and get into worse trouble. So we're seeing this on the media. So the images that we get are, it's a self-inflicted issue of the lower socioeconomic status, weak wills, treatment doesn't work, it's cop-out, because we're watching this on TV. Public perception becomes public policy. How did that happen? How did John Q. Public and his perception of substance use disorder and mental illness actually become public policy? The war on drugs. We've been trying to incarcerate our way out of the crack epidemic for decades, and we've destroyed generations of families. As a result, they did not receive treatment. We have an opioid epidemic now. Oh my goodness, how many people have died before we finally said, no, wait just a doggone minute, we should probably do something about this.
500,000.
And there you have it, 500,000. How many people? The fact that access to treatment is difficult. When we do access treatment, it is the acute care model, which is the self-inflicted broken bone model, or the cold, or the flu. The Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act of 2008, federal law. Anybody familiar with parity? Insurance companies need to pay for behavioral health as readily as they do for other physical health. No state in the United States is in compliance yet. Obama gave us a nice Hail Mary on the way out and created a committee to look into it. Gave us a hotline number to call if we're not accessing treatment as readily as we would for coronary issues. Yeah. The Controlled Substance Reporting System. This is an advocacy win. This is a very powerful tool that physicians have at their disposal, where if I come in and I am seeking opioids in their desire to do no harm, they will check this registry or ask their nurse or ask their clerk to check the registry to see what my prescribing patterns have been, my drug patterns have been. And then she can walk back into the office and say, Mr. McDonald, you just got 90 oxys filled last week. I just can't. It wouldn't be ethical. And as a matter of fact, do you need help? Wow, what a powerful intervention tool, what a powerful recovery initiation tool, a diagnostic tool, potentially. Less than 50% of DEA licensed physicians are registered for it. Less than half of them regularly use it. It is optional in North Carolina. It's been around since 2005, I think. However, new legislation has been introduced called STOP Act that is going to mandate the registration and use of this. The recovery community has been pushing for that. And when the Attorney General's office was writing the initial legislation up, they called upon us to come in and to give our input on how it was going to be written. And we got to help with the language a little bit. Originally, the word abuse was in there. We said, could you take that out? And they said, you betcha. And then we said, when you control prescribing of opioids, there may be a concurrent spike in heroin use. These physicians who are now discovering that their pain patients may actually have a more complex and severe diagnosis, treatment is not readily available for those physicians. Are you aware of that? And they said, well, we should probably put $20 million in there for treatment. And we said, and recovery supports. And they said, and recovery supports. So that's what an organized and informed and on-message recovery community can accomplish at a state level and at a municipal level, right? That's what we can do. They took the money out, though. But that's going to come in the budget process. It's still being discussed. I hope it'll pass. I think it's going to pass. Yeah. But I've been doing this for years, and I always leave it up as an example of discriminatory practice where public perception has become public policy, has become discriminatory practice, because I don't want to speak about vague, inflammatory ideas like that without giving specific examples. And here's a little list. Here's a list. It goes so much further than just treatment, and then recovery supports, and then our ability to live full lives. Because remember, the stigma definition says it stops us from being able to become whole. A young man came to me, said, I want to do an internship at this clinical provider. He had done an internship with me at a peer-driven, non-traditional place before, and he was awesome. He was in recovery. He wants to be a counselor. So he was seeking a clinical internship as his education continued. They turned him down because of his record. Initially, they turned him down because of his record. I said, let me look that up. And it was an 8-year-old drug fellow. And he had been in recovery for 5 years. And in that time, he'd gone back to school and he started a family. He had an epic internship with me. I reached out to them. Would you reconsider? They thought about it. They gave him an internship. He earned the internship. They removed the obstacle to his having the internship. and they just hired him at the end of his internship. So our criminal justice system entanglements that were a direct result of our substance use disorder and the failed war on drugs have been keeping us from re-entering society. Keeps us from giving back fully. That's part of a discriminatory practice that we can start to change. The Harm Reduction Coalition, North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition, has just helped to introduce a new bill about state hiring practices. Call your legislator today. They're talking about it. Say, I'm all for the Hiring Adjustment Act or something. Hiring adjustment. It means that when you seek a state job, they're not going to ask you at the outset what your criminal record is. They can still ask you later in the process, but what this gives you is an opportunity as a person with criminal justice system entanglements, but now thriving and kicking ass in recovery, to sit in front of them and have them say, well, you're a fine, upstanding young man, I think you'll do. Now let's go check your record. Barnacles. You've got an 8-year-old drug felony. I'm not going to hire you. I don't think so. So this is just another chance. That's an advocacy win too. We've rallied the recovery community to write letters and to call moms and dads and people in recovery, and community members and clinicians. Give these people a chance because they get better than well. I got better than well. Unfortunately, one of the major side effects of stigma, after you're exposed to it, is you take it on board. And you lose your own sense of self-worth because of an attribute. And you do not seek help. Internalized stigma. Bad health outcomes on internalized stigma. It's just not good. Less likely to seek treatment. Almost by design. If I can convince you you don't deserve a treatment, you'll stop asking for it. But your mom will keep asking for it. Right? Whew. This is Don Coyas, another national recovery movement leader with the White Bison Wellbriety movement. He teaches us through figurative language, and this example for the power of language really stands out in our movement. This is part of our language training. It really is a cultural construct, what we have decided are coveted flowers and what we have decided are intrusive weeds that need to be destroyed. Some weeds are pretty gorgeous and resilient and they'll cover your lawn, which is a good thing, but we've decided we're going to bring science in and figure out a way to eradicate these from the planet. Weeds. And we'll take an ugly and fragile flower, like, I usually give an example, and I usually offend someone, because there's probably daffodil people in here. Daffodil's a cute flower. It's kind of weird looking, though. It's like, who decided, yeah, this is like the pug of flowers, you know? and we enlisted science to try and make it live forever somehow. More yellow. Language constructs. If I can convince you to destroy one word in your lexicon today, it will have the biggest impact when you leave here. It would be the word abuse. We no longer say substance abuse. We said it for many, many years. My clinical practice board is still named the North Carolina Substance Abuse Professional Practice Board. The national organization that provides my funding, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, they're still named that, but that takes acts of Congress to change those names. But as individuals, we can stop saying it. As organizations, we can change our name or have an unofficial name change and just stop utilizing it in our marketing. As coalitions, this is the Substance Abuse Coalition. We can just stop that right there. Work groups. Take substance abuse out. Make that the first order of business when you join a work group or a coalition or you join an organization. Say, have you considered changing your name? This is also based on research, because we had to research this. What's in a name? What's in a word? 728 awesome, helping, good-hearted people gathered together. Half of them given a case study, the other half given another case study. One of them describes the fellow as having a substance use disorder, the other describes him as being a substance abuser. They were given options that were therapeutic versus options that were more punitive and punishing. Statistically, significantly, the people with the substance abuser gave more punitive responses. So these helpers gave less helpful help because of that one word. And the last question on it was, is he a threat to society? Statistically, significantly, the substance abuser, one said, yes, he is. Lock him up. That's what's in a word. That's a big cohort right there. That's a big sample. I don't know if there's any study geeks in here, but that's a big one. Stop saying abuse. It's not accurate anymore. It's clinically inaccurate. If you're working in the field, that's like saying, let me come up with something offensive. No, let's don't. It's kind of like saying lunatic, absolutely, or like saying, manic depression. It's just not clinically accurate. It is morality based. The word comes out of the temperance movement. We've discovered its roots. And it propagates this notion that addiction or substance use disorder, this diagnosable brain disorder, is a choice. That somehow when I was a 5-year-old playing in a sandbox with my Tonka truck, and my friends wanted to be astronauts and teachers, I decided I wanted to spend all my money on cocaine and get kicked out of the house. Right? That's what I want to be when I get big. I want to go to treatment 5 times. No, it's a harmful word. That's an easy one. You'll have to remind yourself over and over and over again, because this movement in North Carolina has only been going on for about 5 years. And then when I entered graduate school, a clinical graduate school, it was in flux at the time. I kept correcting them, and they substance abuse, and by the end of my 3 years of school there, man, it was SUD, substance use disorder. It was a 3-year transition period. It started now. This is our former director of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, the recovery czar, Michael Botticelli, the first of which who is in long-term recovery from substance use disorder. And this was his Hail Mary as he left office and said, you know what, it's not official. I know it takes an act of Congress. Sent this out. He said, but just, would you stop? Because if we change our language, people can more easily access treatment, reach recovery, and live healthier lives. The word substance abuse inhibits help seeking, and when they do seek help, in spite of our best intentions, we get less than awesome help, because it propagates our stigma. Anybody in the National Institute of Drug Abuse, Dr. Nora Volkow, another rock star. She's awesome, smartest lady on the planet when it comes to brain science of addiction. Getting ready to show you a little clip from a little TED Med where she's laying out for you the smoking gun science that not only is substance use disorder a treatable chronic brain disorder, but it attacks executive function. We lose our self-will when we are in active substance use disorder. We lose our self-will. That's why it makes sense when these normally cool fellows, upstanding chaps, will steal from our purse when they introduce alcohol. We lose executive function. It doesn't happen to everybody when we drink. We get a little stupid, we lose a little judgment, but we don't get the whole frontal lobe cut off. and we're running on instinct.
Addiction and obesity have been stigmatized and dismissed as disorders of poor self-control, self-inflicted, personal behavioral choices. Personal behavioral choices. You know, I've never ever met an addicted person who wanted to be an addict, nor have I ever met an obese person who wanted to be obese. Their dismissal are just problems of self-control. Can you imagine what it must be to want to stop doing something and not be able to do it? And you try, and you fail, and you try again, and you fail again, and again, and you start hating yourself for not being able to do it. I don't need to imagine. I can remember. My grandfather took his own life at his inability to control his alcoholism. One final and last relapse, and he surrendered to self-hatred. Or my obese adolescent patient who contemplated suicide to escape the relentless and cruel bullying from her peers. Dismissal of addiction and obesity as just problems of self-control ignores the fact that for us to be able to exert self-control, we require the proper function of the areas in our brains that regulate our behaviors. In simple terms, and taken to the extreme, it's like driving a car without brakes. No matter how much you want to stop, you will not be able to do it. Some of us, because of our genetics, our developmental trajectories, our social circumstances, are more vulnerable to these disorders than others.
So I'm driving this home because this will make us more helpful as we heal our community, as we hold legislators, bureaucrats, treatment providers, recovery support service providers, as we hold their feet to the fire, as we go to help people who have substance use disorder and mental illness, and we do demand that they get help, and we do draw boundaries, and we do what we have to do to help save their lives, but we don't hate them for it. And then we give them second chances and third chances and fourth chances, because generally speaking, that's what it takes sometimes. It'll be very helpful as we build our recovery community, as we advocate for change, as we create a culture of recovery in Franklin. This will be rich soil that we're going to start with. Wouldn't that be awesome? I got a chance to go see her. I got a chance to go see her in Raleigh. I got invited to a training, and it was a catered training. And I was like, oh my God, I hope they have pie. This is going to be awesome, and I'm going to just ruin any future chance of collaborating with her, and I'm going to walk up to her with a piece of pie and say, please, a selfie. You don't understand, it's a training thing. There was pie, little pies, and as she did the last word of her presentation on the brain science of addiction, she said, I have a flight in a half an hour, I have to leave right now. And she walked right out the door. I thought, well, that wasn't very good planning. And then someone told me that's just what she does. Yeah, she's a rock star. Are we on the same page? Let's catch up again. Stigma drives public perception. Public perception somehow infiltrates its way into public policy. Changing our language could help to change the perception around addiction and recovery and create more sane public health policy. I am curiously fond of researchers and pie. And that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. What else can you do besides changing your language? You can increase recovery visibility in your community. You can become the face of recovery. Whether you are a person in recovery, or a family member of someone in recovery, or who needs recovery, or who has died on their journey to finding recovery. Whether you are a recovery ally in the community, who has seen recovery as a reality, and you want to join this group of people and get under their big broad tent to increase their numbers and to speak out. We host an annual rally for recovery in the capital area. For 5 years, it's been the capital area rally for recovery. And this year, we're going to try to transition into more of a statewide approach to be maybe the hub event. We're going to move it to the first Saturday in October, and then really reach out and support all the other rally events throughout the state, go to them, help them, and then ask them to come, maybe help get them there, maybe give awards for the most awesome and cool rallies throughout the state. This is a big deal. Imagine how many people in the capital area on October 7th-ish, 7th or 8th. Become the face for recovery. Become the voice of recovery. We host an annual Addiction Recovery Advocacy Day, where we gather in numbers, we get up to speed on the issues, we get our language and our message on point, we get fired up, and then we go meet with our legislators. And we tell them, I am a recovery ally, I am a family member, I am a person in recovery. And this is what I think North Carolina needs to do for its people. Become a voice for recovery. That's powerful advocacy. Allies have joined this lately, and it's been an amazing turn of events that has turned into some pretty good legislation that is saving lives. And I've enjoyed being at tables with these fellows, but normally I wouldn't hang out with these people. They wouldn't hang out with me either. But we got Sheriff Asa Buck from Carteret County, who worked really hard with the governor's task force on substance use and mental health, getting more treatment by keeping his message so simple. I'm done locking people up, Donald, but where am I going to send them? And I'm like, you need to say that and say it again and again and again, because I've been saying it and they don't want to hear it from me. But awesome, he says it in such a way that's just so matter of fact, nobody even responds, because it's common sense. It's horse sense. When folks, we're telling law enforcement to stop incarcerating their way out of this problem, but we're not giving them choices of where to put people instead of prison. He has shared with me stories where he has to lock people up or they would die. And I get that, and I thank him. It's a wonderful thing when I go around and I do this stigma reduction training, and it could be a group of law enforcement, and I will apologize to them, and I will thank them for responding to the public health crisis of epidemic proportions, nothing like we've ever seen, with the only tools we've given you as law enforcement officers, and then we blame you for how you responded to it. I'm sorry, and thank you. EMS, nurses, doctors, criminal justice, same thing. We've been expecting them to respond to this crisis, and then finally they're speaking up and saying, okay, fine, I'm on board. What now? Chief Bayshore in Nashville, he just started something. he started meeting the moms. He's wired as a cop. And it made sense. People break the law, you arrest them, you lock them up, and he started meeting moms. And he's like, man, I gotta change something here, and I'm not gonna wait. So they started the Hope Initiative in Nashville. You can go to the Nashville Police Department, you can turn in your dope, and you can ask for help, and they will find you treatment. And you don't just have to be from Nashville. How about that ethics right there? You show up from Franklin, they're going to take you in. How about those apples? And they got a group of moms helping them out, moms and allies and people in recovery called the Anchor Holds, started by a mom. They can't find you treatment, they'll stay on the phone until they find you one. And this has become part of my rhetoric when I advocate for more services, because I spoke at several events throughout the state where I'm a token speaker, but the keynote speaker is a treatment provider from Florida who's taken their kids in and then encouraging the kids to stay. Encouraging the kids to stay. They got to go out of state for treatment, they got to stay out of state to recover. We're better than that. This is North Carolina. North Carolina is my home. We're awesome. But they need to hear it from you. Legislators need to hear it from you. And take care of us. This is what we brought to the General Assembly on that day. We created the ideal recovery-oriented system of care. We asked for the moon, and we wanted them to give us the moon, because this is what it looks like. Recovery comes in stages. It begins with initiation. And that doesn't look the same for everybody. And there's obstacles to initiation. That's getting into treatment or getting into some kind of supportive environment where drugs and alcohol no longer are your only choice. And then we move into recovery maintenance, into a community of recovery where there's access to transportation and affordable housing and peers and a recovery community center, maybe a recovery high school, collegiate recovery programs. And then we move into that center circle that I talked to you about where we get to live full lives, where in spite of our background, we'll get a school loan, like I did, a big one. And we'll get to move from recovery supportive housing into dignified housing, because we deserve it. And then we get to move away from adequate employment I have up there in the middle, but in the center, purposeful job, the purpose of my life, the career of my choosing that I will not be banned from because of my substance use disorder and how it manifested. This is the perfect world. I leave this with you. Use it. This is who I am and all the awesome things that Recovery Communities in North Carolina does. We'll bring messaging training, we'll bring screenings of the anonymous people, Generation Found. It's about recovery high schools. We will help you develop as a recovery community organization if that's what you so choose. If you want to find a recovery community center to start having some organized activities in a safe, stigma-free zone, we can't give you one, but we can let you know how we did it and help you rally support in your community for a place. National Recovery Month, advocacy events, peer coaching in groups. The Access to Recovery program is a voucher program that we have in certain counties. Recovery Coach Academy is a 30-hour training that we do. Please come to that, or we'll bring it to your community. Yeah. I've been wanting to bring one to the mountains. I've got a couple trainers in Asheville that I love to work with. There's no better training out there to help prepare you, to help folks initiate, maintain, and thrive in recovery, no matter their pathway. microphones. I thought that we'd open this up for town hall discussion.
Are they on?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. There you go. She's going to take you upstairs.
Okay. Anyone with questions? Do I get to ask all the questions?
I have a question. One of the things that you said was that it's definitely, this is a treatable kind of thing. Whether the person wants it, is compliant with it, et cetera, et cetera. Now, sometimes you hear in recovery groups that the person has to really want it, and that there are certain people that don't want it. But I loved what you said, that it is independent of that. And I was wondering if you could speak to that just for a minute.
Yeah, I did put that out there, didn't I? One's willingness to go to any lengths should not be the measure for their getting access to wellness at whatever stage they are. Their willingness or the necessity for them to hit bottom, that's not necessarily something that has to happen. We've had a single approach to mutual aid in this country. What happens post-treatment is we send them to a community that has a very singular approach to how they help people recover. And it involves, you gotta want it, and you gotta have enough pain. And that works for a lot of people. But can we not try to expand that out and have more mutual aid where we can meet people where they are? We've started a program in Lake County called the Hope Squad, where after an overdose, post-naloxone follow-up, we'll show up to them, but we'll show up with the full spectrum of support. It could be clean needles and naloxone and tips on safe using. It could be, here's my phone number, call me anytime, give this phone to your mom too, this phone number. Or it could be, we'll take you to social detox tonight, right now, if that's what you want, but it's up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and quote Bill White one more time. He said, problems around the initiation and the successful recovery of people is not about an absence of pain. Because we see people who have had so much pain, but they're still out there. Women who have seen ungodly amounts of emotional and physical pain, but they're still out there, go out and give you some more pain. It's an absence of hope. So if we can just give folks a hope shot for where they are, whatever level of willingness they're at. Because remember, this is a disease that attacks your executive function. It does. Of course they're not willing. But if we can somehow use some motivational interviewing skills to kind of bring them along, very non-judgmental fashion. I was raised in that community where I had to get enough pain. And there was a singular pathway. And it took me 18 years in and out to finally do the mental gymnastics that were required for that pathway to work for me. And I'm speaking of 12-step. It finally worked for me after 18 years. It was not the right fit for me. Serious childhood trauma, mental illness. I should not have been sent to a church basement where someone was asking me, what was your part? And pray your way out of it. That works. It works for a lot of people. That was not appropriate for me at that time. I should have been given more mutual aid options. And that's on the record. I probably am going to get my AA card revoked. Thanks.
Could I?
Okay, I have a loud voice, so I don't need a microphone.
Okay.
The RCNC, is that a state-funded program? which means you'd have to be dealing with the state legislature. And and I'm very concerned about our national health care effects of this new out there. And how much is this truly going to be available to us? And I like when you said about the capital area, because a lot of us in Western North Carolina feel like we don't exist. Or our state just stops at maybe Charlotte. That this part of Western North Carolina does not get the same attention, monies, et cetera, as does the other part of the state, the eastern part. And that's just government, that's funding, everything. So I'd be curious where that fits in there.
And that makes it difficult when I'm seeking support from legislators from rural areas, and they're saying, yes, this is a universal problem, but it seems to be an urban fix most of the times. So, and it is complicated, yes, the funding for my organization does come through state money, through a state division of mental health, and I am an advocate for people with substance use disorder, mental health. So I've had a really good time advocating, yet still maintaining quality relationships. And unfortunately, I think what it took was the opioid epidemic. And I'm just going to put that out there. It took the opioid epidemic for everybody, in spite of their political affiliation, to get a little more brave with what they're going to do about this. And I know that on a personal level, as the outreach person for RCNC, I get the most joy when I go into more rural areas and see sparks of new recovery movement coming up. When I go to Moore County and Wilson and Nash and Franklin now. And I want equity in the distribution of recovery supports and access to treatment. I do. That was our second request when we went to the legislature. Was the first one was access to appropriate treatment on demand and robust recovery support services in every community throughout North Carolina. And then, the freedom to live a full life, too. No, your observation is accurate.
And are those the advocacy training, the Recovery Coach Academy, are those free? Are those, again, where are they located?
Everything's free except for Recovery Coach Academy.
Okay.
One does pay to come to that. I've done a half-price discount for bulk rate if organizations send many of their people to it, and I have a sliding scale rate for financial hardship as well. And we're doing it in Raleigh quarterly, but we're also willing to take it on the road as well and come and stay with. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I get space.
Let's do it. You got space. Yay! I've got a trainer and me and a couple more trainers. So this is kind of what's happening now. Is the beginning of community advocacy is shedding a light on our personal attitudes and our personal stigma and biases that we have. But I'm not pointing them out. I'm affirming them as saying, I feel that way too, have felt that way, but I'm growing in this, and that's a direction we have to go before we start advocating for more support in our community.
You talked about the 1 in 7 who are prone. Is there any way to identify that ahead of time so that they don't have to go through the pain and the recovery?
I would have to say, to identify the 1 in 7 predisposition, I would say no. No,
even family genetics.
it increases the likelihood,
Yes,
more likely, but sometimes that doesn't manifest. It could be some internal resilience or some, you identify with a community within your community, perhaps you join the Scouts. I don't know, there's so many factors involved. This can happen to anybody. But behaviors in your home, certainly there are things that we can look for, and physical manifestations of acute opioid intoxication that we can look for, behaviors that we see happening that may give us concern. There's things, but that's when the behavior is begun. But the important part is for people to have a tribe and to have a sense of purpose, I think. You remember the rat cage study that came out? Rats in this elaborate, beautiful cage with balls and friends and toys, bowl of water, bowl of cocaine. I'm all about the water because I'm having fun in this life I have. Stick me in a cage alone, I'm all about the cocaine. And that's recovery. In recovery, building a rich life and having a tribe and having a purpose in your life and enjoying life.
Breakdown on age groups. I mean, where do you see in substance use as far as what do you see in 6-year-olds, or how are so many kids? Some kids are breaking into the cabinets or whatever, and then how does that work?
Right. So I think in our nation, the average initial age of use is 14. And that's the average, so there's still a significant number of individuals beforehand. I had tried beer by 9 years old and had smoked pot by 11. So I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at, like initial age. Yeah. And if prevention efforts are awesome. Let's don't stop prevention. Let's don't stop prevention, because early drug and alcohol use is just bad for everybody. Particularly if you are the 1 in 7, it's going to further complicate your substance use disorder, make it less likely that you recover as easily as you could. So,
Second part of the question is, do you have pie?
I will. But y'all know Franklin better than I do. Where's the pie after 8 o'clock on a Thursday night? Shoney's?
who was in charge of the pie?
I'm quoting that. Who's in charge of the pie?
Pie for the pie bowl.
Your question?
No, I'm just saying no pie for the pie bowl tonight.
Challenge accepted.
Good. There's an advantage to holding the microphone, folks. What about the increase in heroin use with all of our emphasis now on opiate use? I think that is a huge concern, and I don't understand it necessarily.
Right. What about the increase in heroin use? It's a reality, it's a deadly reality. I would encourage people to have naloxone readily available. I believe we have some here tonight. I have actually a kit in my bag that I keep with me. Naloxone is the overdose reversal drug. It will bring people back to life after an overdose, and as many times as it takes, because they're a human being, and it's our responsibility to keep people alive long enough to find recovery. I'm very concerned about heroin. I'm very concerned about fentanyl. And that's what my law enforcement friends are most concerned about right now. Word on the street is instantaneous death. Instant. Just dropping out right then and there, and multiple naloxone administrations to get people to come back to life. So I'm deeply concerned about it. But we have to be mindful of our history as well. I don't know if y'all remember crack versus powder from the 80s and the ensuing legislation and incarceration that took place afterwards. I would be mindful of keeping your eye out for legislation that differentiates between heroin and pharmaceuticals. And there's something being tossed around right now that looks a little curious to me. They're coming up with language around pharmaceuticals and heroin right now, and there seems to be a disparity in punishments for trafficking for heroin and for pharmaceuticals. But we're taking a close look at that to make sure we're not repeating history. Maybe we're reading it wrong. We're trying to figure that one out, but it seems like the incarceration times and the felony levels are less for pharmaceuticals. What?
I have another question.
That voice,
Yeah, thanks.
Shakespeare.
Where does the RCNC, I guess, how are you feeling about the drug courts? Now, we had, our paper, drug courts coming, it's like cool, because the drug court I'm thinking of is a way to, instead of incarceration, work in recovery program. Well, ours just meant they were petitioning to have an extra day at the court just to deal with court drug cases.
Oh.
Not as far as.
Not a treatment court.
Yes, and it's not what I was thinking it was.
To fast track all the drug cases.
Since you're all over the state, although primarily in the Raleigh area, are other counties, do other counties have these drug court
Yes.
active?
I'm a big fan of drug treatment court myself. It's treatment, and it's year-long treatment, and or sometimes two. It's post-adjudication, which means you are going to have a record, but you're getting treatment for substance use disorder, and you're not getting incarcerated. I did an internship with drug treatment court in Raleigh, North Carolina, when I got my degree. And then we did some advocacy to get their name changed to Recovery Court, and it's official now. They're called Recovery Court. And we've advocated for it at a legislative level to return funding for Recovery Court. But we're also advocating for pre-adjudication, which is law enforcement officers on the street being empowered with encountering someone and ascertaining, you know what, maybe you don't need to be arrested, maybe you need treatment, you want treatment. I don't arrest you, you have no record, you get treatment, you get recovery, and then you try to come back and live a full life and you don't have a felony holding you back. So that's another one, and that's in my circle. Law enforcement assisted diversion, it's called. And recovery courts, inpatient, outpatient, social detox, medical detox, mutual aid groups, multiple pathways of recovery. But I love drug treatment court. I think it's great. It's not being soft on crime. I had lunch with a fellow the other day who was about to graduate, and I'm going to do some coaching with him, and he said, man, I could have just taken 90 days, but I did a year of outpatient, 3 nights a week, 3 hours a night. Oh my God. Traveling to it, it made it hard to do a job. It's very difficult. It's not being easy on crime at all.
Yeah, is there any legislation now that, you can hear me, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That we need to be advocating for, or?
Oh, what's on the legislative landscape now?
Yeah.
Well, STOP Act. STOP Act. It's the bill in the House now. House Bill 142, I think it's called. Right. So it mandates registration and use of the controlled substance reporting system. For acute pain, you go in with an injury or you go in with a dental injury of some kind, 5 days. It reduces your prescription to 5 days for acute pain. Does not impact chronic pain. But this puts less pills on the street for acute pain, because many times when we encounter acute pain, we'll get a big bottle, we'll take a few, and then they go in the cabinet. And a lot of times that can be our first use, or it can be on the street, and or it can create opioid use disorder in people who end up taking all of them. One of the sponsors of the bill says opioids are an interesting thing. You either hate the first 5 or you love all 30. It's interesting. So STOP Act, and I'm all for that, and the hiring adjustment that got introduced very recently. It was in committee yesterday for the first time, and we rallied the troops to go and support it, which is traditionally we've referred to it as ban the box, but this is not ban the box, because you're not banning the box, you're postponing the box to indicate that you've had a felony. So we're very much supporting that. And we're tracking all the legislation right now, and we can keep you up to date on what's relevant to our substance use and mental health community, and do tracking and some analysis, and keep you informed and solicit your support as well. I've got a new contract that I'm working with. She's brilliant. She starts in July, and she's going to be doing all of that with us. Very excited about that. But those are the two that come to mind right now. Stop that.
Here's another one, probably doesn't need the microphone, but.
You should know that the STOP Act was brought forth from our senator, so Jim Davis.
Jim Davis.
If you want more information about it, just contact his office, or I have a talking sheet at the office.
Very proud of you.
I'm very grateful. I sent him a postcard thanking him.
Yes. I would like to plug one more thing. NAMI offers a public education program called In Our Own Voice. There's literature about that on the table. If you're in a church group, a civic group, or any sort of group that has programs, we would love to do that for you. And you can speak to Kay Billingsley, our president. She sort of heads up that program.
Before you talked about your band, I want to hear about your band.
My band?
Yeah.
Oh. I play in a band.
We can have that right here.
Their name is Zen Groove Funkestra. Zen Groove Funkestra. Ethereal jazz and sticky funk. I play trumpet, and yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Anyone else
Didn't
want to
wanna
plug
forget.
something here? We got an audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Very appreciated.
So rcnc.org is our website. Sign up for my awesome newsletter. Podcast.
And please make use of the displays in the lobby with the different organizations that have put out material there, and the sign-up sheets if you're interested in more information on anything. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Awesome.